This is the story of my journey from the drawing board to 2D CAD to 3D building information modeling. I have over 40 years' experience as an architect, most in my own practice. I started off standing at a drawing board. I recall tracing paper that stretched, which made the building 100 millimeters bigger by the end of the day. At 1:100, that is 1 meter bigger. I remember scratching through the tracing paper. I recall hand hatching that was probably worse than using razor blades. My first transition was from manual drafting to 2D CAD. It did make changes easier, but it was pretty much just an electronic version of manual drafting. Every sheet was unconnected, except by the user. You had to change each sheet separately. Usually it was only two-dimensional. It was also not a good communication tool. You often still required hand-drawn 3D sketches. I'm not sure why 2D CAD is still very common. I guess at least computers gave us the chance to sit down. That was until my back went out. 15 hours every day sitting down is no good for anyone. Transition number 2 was from 2D CAD to 3D BIM. How many of you are standing up or using a sit-stand desk? Personally, I put my computer on my drawing board 20 years ago. These days, many still often hand sketch in 2D initially, then outsource 3D offshore to hook the job. Some are drawn in 2D using 3D programs, then they start over again or convert it to 3D, or even worse, it is half drawn in 3D and then converted back to 2D. I have been there and done that. To really harness the power of 3D BIM modeling and communication, all components should be modeled in 3D. So why is the proper use of 3D so uncommon? Why do we use 3D programs as 2D programs? We are smart, are we not? After all, we are architects. In my experience, this is what happens when we start using Revit. We start making our own Revit families. We think we are clever and then we share online. Eventually, we realize our limitations. Usually we then start to understand parameters, so we trawl the net for better stuff. Then we find out there is lots of 3D Revit families available. Perhaps there are now too many. Worse still, the good stuff is hard to find. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack. What about manufacturers' Revit content, I hear you ask? First, you have to register on their website. Then you need a password. Then you have to retrieve the file, which is usually a zip file. Once you have it, a library tree is required if you want to use again. Then you have to open and unzip the zip file. Then you have to wait for it to update to the current Revit version. Then you have to save the updated version, or you will have to do that again. Then you import it, but it does not look right because it has no materials mapped. Now you have to add the material textures into the root directory. Can you trust your staff messing around in your C drive? Now you have to put the cladding into a wall with a frame and sheeting for it to be of any use. Then you discover there are no parameters, or they are not editable, or you find out there are too many parameters. This can lead to the trial and error forever roundabout. 1 hour to make one window. No, that is simply too hard. Why is the internet full of 3D rubbish? As I mentioned, it is the first thing we are taught, so we create our own Revit 3D families. Our egos take over. We all think we can reinvent a better wheel. We are so proud we share it on the web. Soon you have no life and feel like a software coder. You may get really good at it eventually after 5 years or 1,000 hours on your library. But guess what? If it is good, you won't share it. That seems to be the rite of passage. That is why the not-so-good stuff clogs up the internet. Other transition problems. So after 5 years, you have a great library. But what do you do in the meantime without a 3D library? You might end up drawing in 2D on 3D platform. The problem is you never get the time to develop 3D. What happens when you somehow obtain a good 3D library? How do you retrieve it? Even if you had a good family tree, you then find out the temporary name is not descriptive enough, so it takes ages to find what you are looking for. Some people add the standard stuff to their template. That works to a point, but eventually you bloat the template. Then all your standard project files become too large. What is the answer then? You want a good 3D library that is accessible on the cloud with a preview feature, so the name is not as important. You want to be able to preview the file and direct drag and drop into the model only the thing you want when you want it. You want it already updated to your current Revit version. Many say it can't be done. I am here to tell you it can. Stay with me. 3D documentation is currently not used to document or communicate properly. Many people draw in sheets. Don't do that. It is an old 2D habit. Instead, model everything in 3D. Set up all your sheets to populate automatically. Sure, you will have to open the sheets to add labels, which are called tags. If the family is set up correctly, it will tag automatically at the click of a mouse. In my opinion, it is crucial to set up every sheet in the template with lots of overlays. Use overrides in overlays only with layers turned on or off or shaded or light or dashed, so it displays and prints correctly. I get it, you have no time for training. It would be nice to speed up learning as it costs time and money. What you want is for you and your staff to master Revit faster in minimum time. After all, you are not earning when you are learning. One good idea is to include how-to instructions on each and every sheet with QA checklists right there and not in a separate manual. Naturally, a simple manual would also be required. Does that sound like a good idea? So how do I operate? Now I have good families and a good template. I space plan in 3D with generic walls, no textures, with a nominal 250 thickness wall. Then I send my pre-design account. I switch to color for sketch design, still with generic walls, then send a bill. For developed design or town planning stage, I change to a real wall type with required textures and colors all display well in realistic mode. In my opinion, the extra time and cost of expensive renders are not required unless you are paid extra. For working drawings, I switch back to black and white lines with 3D axonometrics in color. Leveraging 3D. In 2D documentation, one change used to mean lots of work in 3D documentation. One change to the 3D model automatically changes every sheet. Change levels easy. Move building easy. But you charge more. After all, you changed 50 sheets. You should get paid for time invested in learning the software. Time invested in making families, money invested in software time, and money invested in software training. Money invested in hardware. Money invested in plugins and subscriptions, etc. What is the solution for architects to transition seamlessly to 3D BIM? No one shares good stuff. Why is that? Because we perceive other architects as competitors. I believe a rising tide lifts all boats. That's why I am so actively involved with an architect's small practice group. So what if you could access 15 years of Revit BIM experience for a fraction of the normal investment in time and money? Even better, what if you could access manufacturers' content with a preview with the ability to direct drag and drop with a plugin app with Australian content? Would that be good? You require a complete system, a great and very extensive library of families, close to 14,000 to start off with. You require a project template with sheets, set out display templates for each sheet, a drawing numbering system, automatic notes and scheduling tags, a manual, and finally support, something or someone to turn to. On my journey, I realized I was not alone. I figured there must be an easier way for me and others, so co-founded QARC Systems with 5 other people, including a couple of software coders and several very skilled and experienced designers and Revit experts. Together we solved all these transition problems. We have now even created a plugin. QARC integrates the BIM content with Revit models directly from a cloud-based library. You don't need a library system tree, as this is provided on the cloud. The content has a search function. The library is available in 2024, 2025, and 2026 versions of the software. The families report directly to schedules. We have even created a unique QARC archetype template for use on any project. Each sheet has a how-to guide. There is even an online link to the user's manual. Support is available online. The whole team, including the coder, are based in Brisbane. You need to address all these issues if you want to transition from 2D to 3D without going broke. I know it is true. I did it and have many other success stories. QARC already has hundreds of subscribers, growing every week. Even manufacturers are now using our plugin as the delivery portal for their families. So you don't even have to log in to the manufacturer's sites. You don't have to use QARC, but you do need to find a system provider, one that supplies all the things QARC does for your preferred software. I am using QARC every day, and it has changed my working life. The QARC system saves me at least 2 hours every day. I know I am far less talented than many veteran Revit users, but I challenge anyone to show me better Revit documents. QARC and its template lets me use Revit without having to fully learn and understand the finer points of Revit. The QARC system has over 10 years of development that is on the back of 10 years of first-hand use. It has been tried and tested by many users and students with direct access via the cloud to a great 3D library. Access to using manufacturers' content via a free QARC interface. Libraries constantly updated and growing. So now let's address the elephant in the room. Setting up a template and library is difficult and time-consuming. That is why I suggest you investigate a provider like QARC Systems. A system will jump you from 25% productivity up to 75% instantly. This all sounds great, but how much does a system like QARC cost? Well, you need to do your own investigations for your software. Prices vary as much as the quality. Expensive does not necessarily mean good. If you are interested, you can talk to us directly. Spoiler alert, it is less than $45 a week. That is the cost of just one coffee every working day. Register your interest and I will send you an ebook as a PDF. A complete guide on how to go from 2D to 3D without going broke. Email me and I will send a link to download the free version of the plugin for manufacturers' content. For more information, go to quarksystems.com.au.